He left me on the very day our daughter graduated. While everyone was clapping for her, my husband was walking away from me. And that's how my life and my revenge began. Hi, my name is Evelyn Hart, and the day my world shattered was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. The auditorium was filled with clapping hands, proud parents, and camera flashes. Our daughter, Leela, was walking across that shining stage, her cap tilted slightly, her tassel golden in the light. She was graduating. 18 years old, the pride of my life. And beside me was him, Caleb Hart. My husband of 22 years, the man who once swore to grow old beside me. Only I didn't know that as Leela walked across that stage, smiling and waving, he'd already chosen to walk away from me. The ceremony ended. Leela's friends gathered around her, laughing, hugging, taking pictures. I remember holding her bouquet of roses, the petals trembling in my hands, when Caleb turned to me and said, "Eve, can we talk?" I smiled, still in the warmth of the moment, but his eyes weren't smiling back. He looked past me like I was a ghost he'd already buried. And then he said the words that still echo in my chest. "I'm leaving, Evelyn. I can't do this anymore." Just like that. No fight, no explanation. Just a man shedding 22 years like an old coat he'd outgrown. I thought he was joking. I laughed, actually laughed, and told him to stop being dramatic. But when I reached for his hand, he pulled it away. That's when I saw the envelope in his jacket pocket. A folded piece of paper with a divorce lawyer's name printed on it. He'd planned this all along, even through the graduation speeches, even through Lila's big day. He'd been waiting for the moment to end us. And then he walked away, right there in the school parking lot. No backward glance, no goodbye, just the sound of his car engine fading into a summer afternoon that suddenly felt cold. People say heartbreak feels like dying. They're wrong. It feels like living, but with every breath cutting you open from the inside. That night, I sat alone on the couch, staring at our family photos, the one from Lila's 10th birthday. Caleb's arm around me, his smile practiced. Maybe it was never real. Maybe I was too busy surviving, cooking, cleaning, working double shifts, while he was quietly falling out of love. The next morning, I found his closet empty, his cologne gone, his toothbrush missing. But on the kitchen counter, he'd left a note. It said only one line: "I hope someday you'll understand." Understand what, Caleb? That you were bored? That our daughter's success made you feel small? Or that I wasn't the woman you wanted to stand beside when the cameras stopped flashing? I went to work that day anyway, because bills don't care about broken hearts, and poverty doesn't wait for grief to settle. I worked at Marston's Diner, the same place I'd been for 14 years. Everyone there had already heard. Small towns in Illinois have a way of spreading heartbreak faster than wildfire. The looks they gave me, pity mixed with gossip, hurt almost as much as his leaving. But I smiled. I smiled through everything, because my daughter didn't need to see me fall apart. That night, Leela sat beside me on the couch and said, "Mom, I'll fix this. I'll talk to him." I smiled again, but inside I knew there was no fixing this. Something inside me had broken too deep to mend. And somewhere in that quiet ache, a different kind of fire began to burn. It wasn't hate. It wasn't rage. It was something colder, sharper. A whisper that said, "Let him go, but never let him forget what he left behind." That's when my revenge began. Not with screaming or crying, but with silence. Because sometimes the loudest revenge is rebuilding yourself into someone they'll never deserve again. They call it moving on, but nobody tells you that moving on can mean starving. Starving for peace, for warmth, for a version of yourself that no longer exists. It had been 8 months since Caleb left. 8 months since I'd watched our savings disappear faster than hope. He didn't just leave me. He left me with debt. Our mortgage, the car loan, the college fund we'd promised for Lila, drained. When I went to the bank, they told me the joint account was closed. He'd moved it, all of it. I remember staring at the teller, her eyes wide with pity. And I thought, how dare she pity me when she's holding the proof that he never loved me enough to leave me standing tall. That night, I made a pot of soup with whatever was left in the pantry. 3 potatoes, an onion, and a dream that things might get better. Lila ate quietly, pretending not to notice the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. She was studying part-time at the community college now, working evenings at a bookstore. My daughter, the girl who once painted sunsets on her bedroom wall, had stopped smiling. I wanted to give her the world. Instead, I'd handed her a broken home and the taste of struggle. One evening, just before closing, a man walked in, a stranger in a gray suit, rain still dripping from his sleeves. He looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from chasing something that keeps running. He ordered coffee, black, and as I poured it, he asked, "You're Evelyn Hart, right? Caleb's wife?" The way he said Caleb, I knew he wasn't a friend. He slid a folded envelope across the counter, a legal document, divorce finalized. He didn't look at me with pity, only quiet understanding. When I asked who he was, he simply said, "Someone who used to trust him." Then he left. Inside the envelope wasn't just the decree, it was a photo of Caleb and a woman half my age, Sierra Monroe, an interior designer from Chicago. Blonde hair, perfect teeth, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to choose between love and electricity bills. That photo burned a hole through my chest. Not because he'd moved on, but because he'd built the lie so beautifully and I'd believed it. That night, something inside me shifted. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I planned. Music shifts. Slow, rhythmic percussion. Building. I began saving every dollar I could. Tips, overtime, coins from under the sofa cushions. I took night classes in bookkeeping and accounting, learning about money, the same thing that had been used to destroy me. Lila didn't understand at first. She thought I was working too hard, but I told her the truth. I'm not working for survival anymore. I'm working for freedom. And every time I balanced a fake ledger or filed a mock tax return, I imagined Caleb's face, the man who thought I'd drown quietly. But I was learning to swim in the wreckage. Fade in light wind and city ambiance. 2 years passed like a storm that wouldn't end. The kind that tears down everything so you can finally see the sky again. By the end of it, I had enough saved to rent a small apartment. Bare walls, secondhand furniture, but mine. I got a certificate, then a real job. Junior accountant at Rourke and Stein Financials, downtown Chicago. Every morning I wore the same gray coat, the one I'd mended a dozen times. But underneath, there was armor. The quiet kind built from pain and persistence. Sometimes on my way to work, I'd pass the glossy building where Sierra's firm was. Through the glass, I saw Caleb once. He looked older, thinner, like guilt had been eating him from the inside. I didn't wave. I didn't even slow down. Because the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's transformation. But late at night, when the world fell quiet, I still heard it, the echo of that day at Lila's graduation, him walking away, the applause in the background, and my daughter's voice calling, "Mom?" I'd done everything right since then. I'd rebuilt, I'd endured, but peace still felt like a place I wasn't allowed to visit. And deep inside, I knew this story wasn't finished. Because somewhere between the hunger and the healing, I'd realized something. Forgiveness might be divine, but revenge is human. They say time heals, but they never mention what kind of scars it leaves behind. 3 years had passed since Caleb walked away. 3 winters of scraping by, 3 summers of pretending I'd stopped caring. But pretending doesn't make the ghosts go away. I was 45 now, older, wiser, and tired in a way no sleep could fix. My mornings began before sunrise. Coffee, toast, train to downtown Chicago. Numbers and files filled my days, columns of profit and loss that somehow mirrored the story of my own life. For once, I was stable. Not happy, not free, just stable. And then came the day everything cracked open again. It was a Friday, a normal, unremarkable Friday, until my boss, Mr. Rourke, called me into his office. He smiled, the kind of smile rich men wear when they're about to change your life. "Evelyn," he said, "you've been promoted. Senior Accounts Coordinator. You'll handle a new client starting Monday. A firm from Lincoln Park, Monroe Designs." The world tilted. Monroe Designs, Sierra Monroe, the woman who'd held my husband's hand while I was holding our life together. I forced a polite smile. "Thank you, sir," I whispered, but my heart was screaming. That weekend, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Lila was visiting, home from graduate school now, radiant, focused, still carrying pieces of her father's absence in her eyes. She found me staring at the city from the balcony, clutching a cup of coffee gone cold. "You okay, Mom?" I nodded. Lied. Because how do you tell your daughter that fate is handing you the very man who broke you? Tied with a bow? Monday came, and with it, the ghosts. The conference room was all glass and chrome. Sierra Monroe entered first, confident, polished, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. Then came Caleb, older, hollow-eyed, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit anymore. Our eyes met, and for a second, everything stopped. He froze, his jaw clenched. I just stood there, calm, professional, untouchable. He opened his mouth, but I beat him to it. "Mr. Hart," I said flatly, "please take a seat. We have figures to discuss." That's when I realized something. Revenge isn't fire. It's ice. It's sitting across from the person who buried you and watching them realize you're still standing. The meeting went on in a blur. Budgets, contracts, invoices. I was sharp, precise, ruthless in numbers. But beneath the calm exterior, old wounds pulsed quietly. When it ended, Sierra approached me. "Evelyn, you're amazing at what you do," she said with a practiced smile. "We've heard a lot about you. From Caleb, I suppose?" Her smile faltered, just for a moment. Then she excused herself, but Caleb stayed behind. "Eve," he whispered, "can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded. Out of curiosity, not forgiveness. We went outside, the city lights flickering against the dusk. He looked tired, regret written in every line of his face. He began, "I made mistakes. I corrected him. You made choices." He looked at me like he wanted to say something real, but cowards always run out of courage halfway through a confession. Instead, he said, "I thought you'd hate me. I did. Then I learned to live without you. That was worse." He swallowed hard. His voice cracked. "Sierra's leaving me. I lost everything. The business, the house. You lost yourself. Long before any of that."
They say there's a moment after grief when you wake up and realize you survived. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like waking from a long, fevered dream, one where everything familiar has already burned away. But you're still breathing. And somehow, that's enough. It had been 6 months since Caleb's accident. 6 months since I'd stood by Lake Michigan, scattering pieces of my past into the waves. People at work whispered about it. Some offered condolences, but I didn't want sympathy. I wanted silence. Silence and purpose. Rourke and Stein had merged with another firm, and with the merger came opportunity. I was promoted again. A modest office, a nameplate that said, Evelyn Hart, Senior Financial Officer. Funny how success can feel both triumphant and lonely at the same time. At night, I'd stay late, running reports long after everyone left. Numbers made sense.
They obeyed rules. They didn't lie or love or leave. Lila called often, but I heard the distance in her voice. She was 23 now, living on campus, pursuing a degree in psychology. She said she wanted to understand why people hurt each other. I didn't have the heart to tell her. Some people just, can. One weekend, she came home. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes carried something new. Uncertainty, maybe, or guilt. We sat on the couch, same as years ago. The silence between us was heavier than words. "Mom," she began, "there's something I need to tell you." I braced myself, because the way she said it, gentle, trembling, sounded too familiar. "I've been seeing someone," she said. "He's a little older. He helped me with my research. His name's Adrian." I smiled politely. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." But then she looked away. Her fingers twisted nervously in her lap. She whispered, "He knew Dad." I froze. "What did you say?" "He worked with him years ago at Monroe Designs. He said Dad talked about you, about how strong you were." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Life has a cruel sense of humor. It keeps throwing pieces of your past back at you just to see if you've really healed. That night, after she went to bed, I sat by the window, city lights blurring through tears I didn't even realize were falling. Part of me wanted to call Adrian, confront him, demand answers. But another part, the quieter, wiser part, whispered, "Let her live her story. Don't poison her with yours." I'd spent so long surviving Caleb's betrayal, I couldn't let his shadow stretch into Lila's happiness, so I stayed silent. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like weakness. It felt like strength.
Months passed. I began mentoring junior accountants, helping single mothers get back on their feet. I started volunteering at a women's shelter every Thursday. The first night I spoke there, my hands trembled. Handwriting. It read, "I knew Caleb. I knew what he did to you. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make things right." And a letter with the initials A.M. Adrian Monroe, Sierra's brother. Everything clicked. The internship, the connection, the timing. It wasn't coincidence. It was history circling back. I didn't tell Lila, but I met him in a quiet cafe near the river. He looked nothing like his sister, rougher, humbler, tired. "He didn't come to hurt anyone," he said. "I just wanted to understand why she did what she did, why Caleb followed her, and to apologize." I said, "You don't owe me that." He replied, "Maybe not, but I owe it to the woman my sister destroyed." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking clock above the counter. Then he said, "Lila is a good person. She deserves more than the ghosts we're carrying." I nodded, because he was right. Maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about refusing to let it repeat. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. The lines, the tired eyes, the small, steady smile.
I wasn't the same woman who'd been left in that parking lot years ago. I'd burned, I'd rebuilt, and from those ashes I'd risen, not as someone's wife, but as someone whole. I thought my story was finally ending, but stories like mine don't end quietly, because the universe always has one last test left, and mine was waiting just around the corner with a secret that would break my heart all over again.
People think closure comes when the pain stops, but it doesn't. Closure comes when you learn to carry the pain and walk anyway. It had been a year since that meeting with Adrian Monroe, a year of quiet, of peace almost. Lila had graduated. She'd taken a job at a mental health nonprofit in the city, helping families rebuild after trauma. She was happy. I'd never seen her smile like that. Her eyes, clear, full of purpose. And standing beside her at the graduation party, I realized she'd become everything I'd once hoped to be. Strong, independent, unbroken. The party was in full swing when I noticed Adrian across the room. He was talking to one of Lila's colleagues, but his eyes found mine. Steady, quiet, apologetic. We hadn't spoken since that cafe, and yet there was an understanding between us, the kind that only two people who've lived through the same storm could share. He nodded. I nodded back. That was enough. Later that night, when the guests had gone, Lila and I sat on the porch steps, a warm breeze carrying the scent of rain. "You proud of me, Mom?" she asked. I smiled. "More than you'll ever know." She hesitated, looking at her hands. "I have to tell you something about Adrian." I stayed still. "He told me everything. About Dad, about Sierra, about how he met you." My breath caught. "And you're still with him?" She nodded. "He's not them, Mom. He's kind. He's trying to make up for what they did, and I love him." I should have been angry. I should have screamed, told her how love destroys, how it blinds, how it leaves scars that never fade. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw myself, all those years ago, before bitterness took root, and I realized if she could find love in the ruins of what destroyed me, maybe that was her kind of redemption. Then love him, but love yourself more. She smiled through tears, leaning her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, the silence between us was peaceful. Weeks passed. Life settled into a rhythm that almost felt normal, until one afternoon a letter arrived. No sender, just my name in familiar handwriting. I opened it, and my heart stilled. It was from Caleb's lawyer. Inside was a note, written months before his death. "If you're reading this, Eve, it means I'm gone. I don't expect forgiveness, but I left something for you and Leela, a trust fund, untouched since before I left. Maybe it's not redemption. Maybe it's just regret with interest. I'm sorry I didn't know how to love you the way you deserved. C." I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands.
Not because of the money, but because for the first time I believed him. He was sorry. Too late, but sorry nonetheless, and somehow that mattered. I didn't cash the fund right away. Instead, I used part of it to open a small foundation in my old hometown, the Leela Grace Center, a place where single mothers could learn job skills, rebuild, and find their footing again. It wasn't about Caleb anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about taking the pain that once owned me and turning it into something that could save someone else. Years passed. The lines on my face deepened. The ache in my chest softened into memory. Sometimes I'd visit the center, watching women laugh, work, and begin again, and every time I saw one of them smile, I'd think, this is what rising from ashes looks like. One evening, I stood by the lake again, the same spot where I'd once scattered Caleb's photo. The water shimmered gold under the sunset, and I whispered, I forgive you. Not for him, for me, because forgiveness isn't a gift you give the one who hurt you. It's the key that unlocks the cage they left you in. My name is Evelyn Hart. I was once a wife, a mother, a survivor. Now, I'm just a woman who learned that love doesn't end with betrayal. It simply changes form. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is living a life so whole, it makes the pain that tried to destroy you feel small.